Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. And this video is to bring you a closer look at the Hager. This is their part number RC1542. This is a 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch US15 hinge. This is a, I would say that this would be a less common hinge, even though it's incredibly common in all other aspects. The less common aspect of this would be the fact that this is made of solid brass. This is a brass hinge that has a brass pin. So where someone would be wanting to use this particular hinge is when they wanted to have a finish like US15, but they should call this 619. 619 would be the BHMA part number for satin nickel over solid brass. This would qualify to be called that. When someone wants this hinge, they want it because the finish ought to be superior when it's on an architectural base material compared to a steel base. Or they're in an application where they want brass hinges. A 3.5 hinge like this, who knows what they're doing with it, made of brass. If it's for the non-ferrous properties of the base material, they could be literally doing some sort of application in a coastal or exterior environment, and they don't want the hinge to rust necessarily. This hinge can also be done in stainless steel. That would be a good option for that as well. Could be because of the finish. You'll get a really nice finish out of a piece of solid brass with a satin nickel finish on it. So the RC1542 conspires to mean a number of things, and in no particular order. As we demonstrated earlier, that's made of brass. It is a full mortise hinge. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaf here and here that the leaves are meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame when it's installed. It's a 5-knuckle hinge. It is a plain bearing hinge. There are no bearing packets at all. It is an RC. RC means 5/8 radius on this hinge. A 5/8 radius is, of course, 1.25 inch diameter. Where do they come up with these radius corners? Well, where they come up with it is when you are mortising with a router, doors and frames. You can use router bits of different diameters. You're going to use either a 1/2 inch or you're going to use 1.25 inch. One will yield a 1/4 inch radius, which you can then leave 1/4 inch radius or square out that corner to give you a 1/4 inch radius, a square corner, or you'll use that 1.25 inch to yield a 5/8 radius. Now, a 5/8 radius, from the perspective of the door shop, the mill worker, the pre-hanger, that tool path is in, over, out, done. With a 1/2 inch, you're routing like this, you're routing like this, you're practically doubling the amount of tool path. So a larger bit is removing more material, but it's also leaving more material in that corner. So that's where 5/8 radius is going to come from. If your material is prepped with a 5/8 radius, this is great. If you can't find a radius corner hinge or only a square corner, well, hammer and chisel. You know, if you can, if it's not a steel edge door or whatever you're applying it to. They say that this is also reversible. It doesn't matter if this is a left-hand door or a right-hand door. You can, of course, drive that pin out should you want to, but I don't see any reason to install it upside down. You know, button tip, pin goes towards the top of the door and frame, and that'll be that. Okay, it's going to include screws. These are slightly magnetic. I would be tempted to think that these might be stainless, because brass would have no magnetic property at all. So these might be stainless. Something has to account for the fact that they're very slightly magnetic. What else does the RC1542 mean? Well, it means that it's this particular hole pattern when it's 3.5 inch. Let's talk now about the size of the hinge. The size is 3.5 inch tall and 3.5 inch wide. It's important to know that the height is the first dimension. Probably not so important at this stage if you're dealing with a square hinge, but it would be important to know if you're dealing with 4.5 by 4 or 4 by 6. You want to know which is that first dimension, and that is the height. The thickness of the leaf, this ought to be probably about 96 thousandths. We'll discover that, but my caliper, since I'm taking dimensions, tells me 0.088, so it's 88 thousandths of an inch thick. Okay. Now let's move onto a screen view of this product and take a look at the supporting documents that we have down below. Okay, so this is the item that we are looking at here. And extended description information must be purchased in quantities of 2. I don't have a problem ordering odd numbers, and I can bring the hinges into us first and put the remaining on the shelf, the remainder. But Hager likes to ship them as boxes of 2. However, the unit price is per hinge, so that's, of course, very confusing, no doubt. US15, removable pin. We demonstrated earlier we could drive that out if we wanted to. That's our size. Full mortise, brass hinge, brass pin. 085 is what they're calling out. I believe we measured 088. 6 hole count, and we'll get to the template in a moment. Pin diameter, should you want to know that. Reversible, radius corners, residential weight. Residential weight on a 3.5-inch hinge goes together with this. Residential equals this on this. It is a 5-knuckle plain bearing hinge, as we discussed. The screws that are included are a number 9 by 3/4 inch. And packaged is 2 from the factory with screws, and the price is per hinge. I don't know what lubricant they are recommending for their hinges. If it's something that's going to pick up some moisture, you might consider white lithium grease. That's very water repellent. Okay. Now, the supporting documentation. Template. Let's look at the template. This is a technical drawing of this hinge, okay, and all of the other Hager part numbers that are the same dimensional properties. Okay. What will change, of course, will be the 5/8, 1/4 inch, or square corner on all these different part numbers. Okay. So it's a template that will apply to many different hinges. Obviously, our RC1542 would be in the non-ferrous column right here. It is handy because it will show you the location of the screws, should that be of interest. It will show you the gap between the 2 leaves when they're brought parallel based on the swag line that's here and here. Okay. We'll also show you the length of the leaf from the start of the swag line to the edge of the leaf. Some people like to know that. You know, I know it's 3.5, but what is only the leaf portion? Some people like to know that. Looking at the data sheet, that's just a cut sheet from the manufacturer. Nothing new there at all. It could be something that you include with your packaging, with your submittal package, I should say. It does give us other finishes, however, that we can look at. US3 for polished brass. US4 apparently in a 3.5, 3.5 only in satin brass. ABA is also known as US5, which is antique brass. US10R is an antique bronze, relieved and lacquered. It's a little darker version of oil rub bronze, except there's no oil involved. Oxidized relieved, I think they call that. It's a darker version, and I'll show you these finishes from Hager next. US15 Satin Nickel, Antique Nickel, 15A, 3.5, 3.5 only. Polished Chrome, again. Satin Chrome, Polished Stainless, and Satin Stainless. Okay. Now, in our website, and very likely by the time you're seeing this video, this will all be in a different location, but we have a finish chart from Hager. And it's here. Yeah, there's a couple of them actually. Hager finish chart, Hager product finish guide, Hager residential hinge finish chart. Sprayed finish we don't care about. So we were talking about 10R. I don't see that they have 10R listed on that first sheet. Antique bronze lacquered. That's 10R, page 7. Well, they call it 10A. I think the R is going to stand for relieved. Antique bronze lacquered and relieved. Gives it a little different finish. They don't have that there either. There we go. Antique bronze oiled. It's a darker version, like I said earlier. They will kind of use this in replacement of US10B sometimes. Antique bronze relieved. Antique bronze oiled. You know what? Let's take a look and see what the BHMA chart tells us. We can do better than what we're doing. The BHMA finish chart. So let's do a find function for 10R. And it is not even on here. So that might be a Hager specific finish. Yeah, it's not listed in their product finish guide as we had discovered earlier. I was just looking for a little bit better information about how they term that. Yeah, anyway, so it's a little darker version of a dark bronze. So back to our cut sheet. Everything else here is rather elementary. The product catalog, and that's handy because that will allow you to review this hinge and its sister products. You want a square corner version, here it is, 1541. Now notice they're showing you a 4-inch hinge here. When it's a 4-inch hinge, it's going to be a different animal when it comes to the location of the screw holes. A 3.5-inch is going to have 3 holes in a template pattern. Okay. Handy to be able to look at these other hinges. The issue, oh, and forgive me, the ball bearing version is here. If you're doing a door of any weight or of any use in terms of volume at all, absolutely go to ball bearing immediately. Don't even consider plain bearing. It's, even if you had a door that was only open 10 times a day at the most, in 20 years, you're definitely going to tell the difference between a plain bearing and a ball bearing hinge. That may not matter, but it will matter to someone, there's no doubt. I would simply spec the hinge correctly to begin with. I can't really make an argument for plain bearing in the instance of you having a door that might be opened twice a year, and it just doesn't matter. Other hinge options are here. What you want to do with Hager, because they have so many options of residential hinges as we continue to scroll through. I mean, we're into page 4, and there's many options per page, is you'll need to make sure that the pattern of holes, the pattern of screw locations are going to match what you're doing. This zigzag pattern is not uniform from every manufacturer. Hager, I believe, has some stuff that's uniquely Hager, and even though other people have stuff that's incredibly close, uniquely Hager is an accurate thing to say. You've got the square corner by radiused corner. That's when you have a steel-edged metal-clad door with a, a wood frame. You could see that very commonly, etc. Now back to the manufacturer's, back to the item that we're working on. This is the link to the manufacturer's page here in the website, and that's an important document, or a link, I should say. It will allow you to see not only all of the Hager products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's full-line catalog, their website, other important documents that are here. If you are into locksmithing at all, and you are interested to know more about the Hager keying system, that manual would be very helpful in this companion video that I made about the Hager keyways and their keying system. Let's finish up this video on camera. So again, where you're going to use this hinge, somewhere where you want a nice looking hinge, 3.5, 3.5, radius corners made of brass. Okay, you are certainly going to pay extra for the brass base material of this. And so therefore choose accordingly. Probably where this is going is in maybe a gate structure in an exterior environment would be my guess. You want a nice looking piece of equipment that's not going to rust immediately. Okay. The name Hager Hinge Hager Hinge is their namesake, a company that's been in business since about the mid 19th century. They are, however, a manufacturer of many more things other than just hinges and lock sets, exit devices, electrified hardware, door closers, weather stripping, trim and auxiliary, accessory hardware, signage. Their continuous aluminum geared hinges under the name Roton, etc. If you have any questions on the Hager RC1542 in a 3.5 inch size and a satin nickel finish, or any other Hager product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.